Okay, everybody, so I watched the episode again and kind of jotted down a couple notes I had. First of all, why is the Dothraki and Unsullied army, why are they so big? We've never seen, I wouldn't say never, but in this season at least, we've never seen that many Dothraki and Unsullied, especially Unsullied. And the Dothraki, I thought most, if not all of them, got annihilated in episode 3. So go ahead and explain that one to me. I get it, you want Daenerys to look super mighty, and it looks better if she's got a huge army, but let's be real here. She didn't take the city with a huge army. She wasn't really supposed to have a huge army. In that scene where she shows up to negotiate with Cersei, it looks like she has maybe, I don't know, a couple hundred men behind her. And maybe that's just the way they shot it to be cheap, but it seems like all the Unsullied look exactly the same. It seems like it'd be really easy with CGI to just make more of them. And that's what they did in this episode. And so we got what looked like to me to be 10,000 Unsullied standing there. It's just unbelievable how inconsistent these guys are. Another inconsistency, the collapse of the castle. You know, they made it seem like the whole castle was coming down in episode 5. And here we are in episode 6, and all the characters are walking through it, and everything is conveniently somewhat destroyed, but not destroyed enough where you don't know what room they're in, and not so destroyed where the important landmarks that'll trigger some sort of nostalgia within you aren't recognized, right? The throne room, obviously the Iron Throne is completely untouched. I don't know if I would expect it to be destroyed, but there's no rubble on it, there's nothing. In the map room, whatever you want to call that, the Westeros map room, you know, the side walls are all crumbled and whatnot, but the map's still somewhat visible. You go downstairs to where Cersei and Jaime died, and that whole thing seemed like it was coming down in episode 5, but alas, Tyrion's walking through it, and it looks fairly intact. There's a couple piles of rubble here and there, but I mean, what are the odds that Jaime and Cersei just happen to be standing in one of the spots that in one of those rubble spots right there, you know? I guess you could make the argument that it's all covered in rubble, and it just appears to be flat when Tyrion's walking over it, but honestly, this all, even from a production standpoint, or from a production standpoint, I guess I should say, this all just comes off as lazy and cheap. Not cheap in a financial sense, but just cheap in the lazy sense, you know. 8 seasons, and this is the kind of shit we get. So the throne was intact until Drogon melted it. What was up with that? What was up with that scene? Dany, when she gives her little Dothraki speech and has old Tyrion arrested, Dany walks by Jon and gives him this death stare that would have you believe that she's still on this Mad Queen kick, and she's gonna either have Jon executed or just treat him like shit. And then the next time we see them together in that climactic throne room scene, she's all lovey-dovey and smiling and in a way making an emotional plea to him that everything she's done is justified. There's no consistency here. She's either pissed off at Jon or she wants to, you know, get frisky with him. You know, she's either giving him death stares or she's trying to win her back over to her side, you know? It doesn't, a lot of this, the problems with this season come from the fact that there's no consistency. There's no character consistency from previous seasons. There's no, in a lot of ways, there's no consistency just from scene to scene. And this is a good example of it. I know that they made her sweet in that throne room scene so that we would sympathize with her character as Jon kills her, and we would feel the full weight that Jon's feeling, you know. If she's a complete and total bitch and Jon goes in there, then we don't really feel too bad about him killing her, even though we should. You know, she's been a main protagonist in this show for 8 seasons. Anyway, that was ridiculous. Grey Worm not killing Jon or Tyrion. You know, I don't know how much time has elapsed in between Jon killing Dany and that little council and whatnot, but the fact that Grey Worm, this guy who also lost Missandei and then just lost his queen and seemed to be just as bloodthirsty as Dany when he was basically attacking unarmed Lannister soldiers and then executing them after the battle. How on earth did he not kill Jon after he found out Jon killed Dany? And I'm not sure how he found out Jon killed Dany, because Drogon flies off with Dany's body, and it seems like it'd be easy for Jon to just be like, oh, I don't know what happened to Dany. She's your queen too? Where is she? I don't know. You know, I don't know. But it was a little weird that Grey Worm just kind of went along with everything. Same thing with Tyrion, you know. He just kept Tyrion locked up all that time, and I don't really see any motivation for Grey Worm to be so agreeable at the end here. He's way too agreeable in my opinion. Let's see, Edmure Tully standing up and giving a little self-promotion speech at that council. Seemed like they did it as comedic effect and also to kind of add something more to the scene so that it wasn't just a scene of them propping up Bran and that's it, but it was pretty, I don't know, man. I don't mind when Game of Thrones goes funny, but for this last episode, I would have preferred a nuanced scene where these characters actually kind of debate what's important for the future of the realm, rather than some shitty comedy and then a consensus reached all of a sudden. I don't know. So yeah, they all vote in Bran, and Sansa says that she's gonna be queen of the North essentially, and they're gonna maintain their sovereignty. And let's see. I don't really know how I feel about that. In a way, I guess you could say Bran and Sansa won, but if the North is a separate kingdom from the 7 kingdoms, or the 6 kingdoms, I guess you could, then it's kind of strange to me that Bran is now the king of the 6 kingdoms, because he's a northerner. And it's almost like if Texas were to secede from the United States, and then the United States were to elect a former Texas congressperson to be president or something, you know. It's just a little bizarre. When they all laugh at the idea of democracy at that scene, again, more comedy that to me just kind of fell flat. You know, I get it. People in the medieval ages were not so open to the idea of democracy or just allowing the lower class to have any say whatsoever. But comedy right here didn't feel right to me. What's up with all the snow earlier in the episode? Why is it snowing? When I first watched it, I thought, that's gotta be ash, right? Because the Night King's dead, and it never snowed in King's Landing. It started snowing in King's Landing at the end of last episode, or end of last season, sorry. But that was because the Night King was moving south, so I was confused by the snow. I suspect the snow is 2 things. To have some poetic fire and ice ending during those scenes where Jon stabs Dany and blah, blah, blah. And also, I suspect it was so that they didn't have to worry so much about the CGI for destroyed King's Landing. Because if you look at the background in all those shots, the poor weather really creates an out for the CGI team to just basically do nothing with the backdrops. You know, it's you don't see anything in the background because of the weather. So pretty much the same thing they did in episode 3, where, you know, a big cloud rolls in and it makes it so that the CGI you do see is more believable, and they have to do less CGI as far as the backgrounds and whatnot. They really should have debated a little bit. There should have been a nuanced scene where the characters kind of discuss more at length what the fate of the 7 kingdoms or the 6 kingdoms or whatever should be at this point. Jon goes up to the Night Watch. I don't understand what the Night Watch is even for at this point, because the wildlings seem like, if nothing else, allies. I don't know. They're not a part of the North, I guess, but they've got to be allies at this point. And Arya killed the Night King, and they haven't established an idea of some sort of cyclical nature to this whole thing. So Arya killed the Night King. Why is there still a Night Watch? Doesn't make any sense. And my last note here is Maester Ebrose writes fast, meaning that, God, you know, it's been probably, a couple months since everything ended, and this guy has this huge book written already. Don't we all wish George could write that fast? Jesus.